Welcome to another episode with your host, Robert E. Hansen, psychic medium, author, and public speaker.
Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Today I'd like to share a little story that occurred in one of my readings. And it's a really beautiful story, so if you could just give me a few minutes, I think you might enjoy this. This happened some time ago. I had a family come to see me, and unfortunately, their younger daughter had passed away. Sadly, she was diagnosed with cancer at a relatively young age, in her late teenage years, and these struggles had gone on for some time, and they had come to see me for a session. And they had never met me before, as we kind of make it a standard with my office that we allow people to give us no information. We don't want any last names. We really limit as much as we possibly can all possibility of any intrusion into the family's personal life. We just have an appointment. My name is John. This is my contact number. I'll see you on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. That's it. We don't ask for anything else. We don't allow people to tell us anything else. And I think that's the way things should be done, but that's the way we conduct ourselves, at least within my office and how I ask my staff to work with people. So this family shows up and they come to sit down, and there was a husband and a wife and two siblings. And it was really heartbreaking because anytime, certainly if there's the death of anyone, it's very painful. But when you have the death of a young adult, a child, someone's child, it's just beyond pain. It's just misery. It's just really, really rough, So we were doing the reading, and I was sharing some names, and I was talking about some events, and I was talking about this, talking about that, and I was explaining to them that there was a gathering at bedside. And, for those of you that may not know these processes, either you're there when someone dies or you're not there when someone dies. It's not a real big psychic thing. It's either you're present when someone has crossed over or you're not there. In my own case, I wasn't there when my dad passed away. Shortly after he died, though, I was alerted to it. I went into his home. I found my father dead in the chair, and it was heartbreaking. But I didn't know my dad was going to cross. If I knew my dad was going to cross, I certainly would have been there, right? But that just was not to be. But in this particular case, the family had gathered around their daughter. And they were telling me about her struggles and her suffering and her need for chemo and, her nausea and how her legs would swell and her arms would swell and, the heartbreak of the parents and the siblings were all devastated. It was really, really very emotional, very, very moving. And as in my experience, what typically happens in a session is there comes to a point where there is something dramatic that takes place in the session. It may be something that has happened in the last 24 hours. It may be something that happened right before death arrived. It may be something that took place 10 years before. But the soul will make every effort to share something specific through the medium, through the channel, to be certain that the family knows it's absolutely the one they're searching for. I caution everyone, and I've always stated this, that when there is kind of generic commenting, when there is kind of this expanded expression of, oh yes, when you see the stars at night, that's them smiling at you. There's nothing wrong with it. It sounds very sweet. It's romantic in a way. It endears a certain closeness to the heart. It can make you cry, possibly. If you look at a beautiful sky and it's full of stars in the evening and someone says to you, well, that's your daughter smiling down upon you. I mean, if you're a parent that lost somebody, of course, you could have a reaction to that, but most people kind of step back for a moment and say, I know they mean well, and they're just trying to comfort me in their own way of doing it, but, it's not my daughter. I just know it's just the movement of someone. It's almost like they're reading a goodwill card from a store. They're going to a card store, they buy something and it says it and they want you to believe it, or at least accept it as a gesture of goodwill and hope. And there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I'm not taking that away from anybody. It's just, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit too broad-based. So I'm doing the reading with these parents, and I saw something, and I said, I said there's a time that, I think in chemo treatment, you sometimes see women, unfortunately, perhaps who have breast cancer, and every once in a while you may go shopping and you'll see a woman recovering from breast cancer or in the middle of breast cancer treatment, and her hair has fallen out. She has the appearance of baldness. She has her head wearing some kind of a head covering, whether it be a baseball cap or something a little bit softer, and it wraps their head kind of like a little cocoon. And you can, pretty much tell they look a little thinned out. They may be a little pale. And there's a certain anxiety in their face that people notice them. And, they don't want to think about their sickness, but it's always seemed to be with them like a shadow, always following them wherever they go. And so it's not uncommon for people to feel that way, which is very understandable, extremely understandable. You'd have to be made out of stone to just say, well, I have really serious cancer, no big deal. That would be a little bit much. So I think it's very reasonable to expect it. But in this particular case, I'm reading with the parents and the siblings, and I'm talking about the bandanas. Now, bandanas are like a handkerchief or a kerchief, and they have to wear around their neck. It's typically seen in cowboy movies, and people wear them, at work, and certain people wear them in their jobs. If they're doing landscape or something, they may wear something around their heads, a bandana. But the parents were staring at me, and I said, your daughter keeps wanting me to talk about the bandanas, but not just the bandanas, that someone took the bandanas and sewed them together to make a blanket. Well, that was all she wrote. They started crying. They started laughing. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on here? They said, Robert, we took my daughter's bandanas. We took a few of my daughter's T-shirts, her softball jersey, and we sat down not too long ago, like in the last few weeks, and we actually had our family come over and we sewed together a blanket of my daughter's bandanas, her T-shirts, her softball jersey, and it's almost like an Afghan or a quilt. And it's full bed size. It's the size of a full bed. And my husband, who was now sitting next to this woman talking, crying his eyes out, saying, it lays on our bed. We have her bandanas and her T-shirts and jersey in this beautiful blanket of memory for our beautiful daughter that crossed over. And we go to sleep every night with that bandana blanket laying on our bed. And I started crying with them, to be very candid with you guys. I'm a dad, I have kids. I unfortunately have to deal with parents that have these terrible losses, and if I can help them, it's my absolute privilege and honor to do so. But before we finished up, I looked at one of the daughters, one of the other children, and I said, you have it with you. And she goes, what do you mean I have it with me? I said, you brought a bandana in this room that belongs to your sister that's not part of this blanket. So the parents kind of looked at her and said, I thought we used all the bandanas. I thought we used them all. And the daughter went into her little handbag and she pulled out a bandana. The parents almost fell out of their seats. Me too, for that matter. And she said, I just kept this one for me. I just didn't want to let it all go. Would have no bandana for myself. I just wanted to hold on to this one bandana. At that moment, they all knew that their beautiful soul of their child, their daughter, their sibling, was present with me in that room. And this child has risen around them to let them know she is at peace. She is free of all cancer. She is free of all sickness. And she absolutely is thrilled that they took the time to build this quilt blanket in honor of her that lays on their parents' bed every night. I just wanted to share that story with you guys. I think it's one of the more beautiful parts of the readings that I've experienced. Her soul moved through me so beautifully with this information. And I wish I could return the child to the parents, but I can't. But the soul of their daughter, the rising of that soul, was just awesome to experience. I wanted to share this with you. So if you ever doubt, ever have question marks that they love you and are gone, please, they have never left you. You can never lose them. They are with you always. Know that in the deepest part of your being. I wish you peace, everybody. Thank you.